computer. Okay, I think it's Thursday, as we're trying to remember what day it is in this crazy world. My name is Andrew Obrecht, and I'm with EO Calgary, and I have Christine Dagenais with me. And her company is all about helping high achievers rise higher. And so I'm very excited to kind of learn more about you and your business. And I'll keep all those details of who you are and what company you have to your intro. First of all, I'd like to thank our sponsor for today's, let's call it an episode, Fully Managed, one of our amazing sponsors for EO Calgary. But Christine, why don't you do an intro to yourself and your company, and we'll go from there.
Sure. Thanks very much, Andrew. Thanks for having me with you in this episode today. And always looking forward to great conversations that we can share about each other's businesses. So yeah, my name is Christine Dagenais, and I'm the founder and CEO of Brightwire Leadership. And we've been in business for almost 15 years, although we've been growing rapidly for the past 8 years in particular. And essentially, we work with high-performing individuals, teams, and organizations to ensure that they're equipped with the skills that they need to be able to execute the future plan. And I tell you, there's nothing, like the world as of late to highlight the need for effective leadership. And so, yeah, I've been in this space in the world of adult learning and leadership development in many different avenues throughout my entire career, working both in-house in very senior leadership corporate roles, as well as growing as an entrepreneur over the years. And I lead a team of 14 experts in the space of leadership development, 13 of which are professional executive coaches. And yeah, Brightwire, we really have two portfolios. One segment of our business is leadership development strategy and programs. So formal training, bringing leaders through, capability building experiences so that they're equipped to lead strong for the future. We have a bit of a leadership development consulting side as well, where we help companies build their strategies to develop their people. And then the other side of our business is a professional coaching practice. And so we do that work one-on-one, A players finding their plus is what we like to say, as you've alluded to. So really helping people be intentional about how they show up and, carving out the next space in their career. So individuals, we work with teams to become higher performing together. And, essentially we facilitate all the hard conversations that teams aren't always focused on themselves. And we work with companies programmatically, where a leader or an organization might have 20 or 30 leaders at any level going through professional coaching at any given time with Brightwire. So yeah, we're a leadership development company. We're based in Calgary. We work globally, and I have an exceptional team. So I'm happy to tell you more about all of that today too.
Yeah, that's amazing. And of course, we're going to dive into what that looks like in nowadays, right? But, what lights you up about what you do? Why do you do what you do? What was it about maybe your upbringing or certain experiences that kind of got you into starting Brightwire?
Yeah, thanks for the question. I get it often because it's sort of that unique space to play in, and it's almost this like intangible aspect, particularly of business, that when you don't have it, you realize it. When you don't have good leaders or leadership skills, and then when you do have it, you really see the results. So people are often curious. I've always loved learning, and I always am the weird person who's loved public speaking. And so one time someone said, like, Christine, if you love learning and public speaking, like, why don't you do training and development? And for me to be able to share my love for learning in this really scalable, exponential way was so incredibly rewarding that essentially I just built a career based on that. And then when I made the choice to move from the corporate world to entrepreneurship, to me was about that, again, that exponential impact of our work, and to be able to do that with more people who were as passionate about that space as I was. And it is truly exponential. I know we use that word a lot as entrepreneurs. And, when we think about scaling businesses and growth and hockey stick, trajectories. And in this case, when you're working with, a senior leader and they're responsible for an organization of 8,000 people, if they lead their direct reporting team differently and inspire them to motivate the potential of others differently, those leaders will lead differently. And all of a sudden you have this critical mass that's being established in a way that didn't exist before. So it's just such rewarding work. There's honestly not a day where I don't sit back and go, it is so interesting how I managed to get paid for this. Like it is unbelievable. It's so wonderful.
That's awesome. And then
Yeah.
so let's kind of dive into it, because I'd love for the people listening and watching to have kind of tangible
Yeah.
takeaways with regards to leadership. Because I think as a leader over the last few years, it's been an absolutely insane experience. And so what did leadership look like prior to the pandemic, and how's that changed today?
Yeah, such a big, bold question. The question of the day, the question of every day for us. I think I would sum it up into one word that would describe this real transition, and it's intentionality. So in the past, we were able to be passengers. We were able to, react and not respond. We were able to transact but not informed. Survive, not thrive. All those kind of words we read about. And we're really seeing that distinction now. Like those who are successful are doing it by design and not by default. And the ability to, make those decisions in the moment, in advance of the moment occurring, is a critical skill that we're working with many people right now to develop. So, we've taken for granted a lot of what we came from. It was just sort of the norm. We were busy, heads were down, execute the plan, drive for results. And now we have this really wonderful opportunity. And those who are most successful are doing this really well, where they sit back and they zoom out and they go, okay, so that once was, this currently is, what do I want the future to be? And so that only is possible if you're able to adapt this intentional capability. And it requires reflection, it requires creating space, it requires stopping for a moment and being objective and being neutral. And if you can rally those, leadership capabilities up and adopt them into your day-to-day practice, you can create the future that you want instead of just sort of receive the future that's happening around you. Do you know what I mean by that?
Yeah, absolutely. And it seems like the playbook, there is no playbook, as far as kind of moving through the pandemic, but it's nice to kind of maybe reflect at this point in time to start seeing some of those truths come out, as you're talking about, right? Navigating at the beginning of it, as someone myself that leads many people, it seems like you were doing the best that you could, but that intentionality is a good point.
It's by design, not by default.
Yeah,
And Andrew, we've been talking about the pandemic kind of in three phases from a leadership perspective. So the first phase was that crisis management, like, whoa, March 17th or whatever the date was, for us Albertans anyways, the world has shut down. And now we're reacting because we have no choice. So that happened for like a good kind of 6 months. And people were like, okay, this pandemic is here to stay, but for how long, right? And what are the implications? So that was the period of time we call it of in the intervening period. And an intervening period by definition is the point of time between A and B, but you don't know how long that time will be. It has no end point. And we're still arguably almost there. We have a few sort of, brief, views of potentially being past the pandemic, and we're still in it, right? So we've done all the research around the intervening period and what's needed from leaders. And that's where intentionality comes into play, and endurance leadership and other things.
Yeah, there. Yeah, fully agree. And it's interesting. One of the benefits of being part of EO is we have access now, especially over the last couple of years, doing more virtual events. And I remember in the global leadership conference that happened maybe a couple of years ago, but during the pandemic, they were interviewing Gary Vaynerchuk, and he's a big culture community guy, and they were asking him about community and culture, and he kind of said, if you didn't have culture before the pandemic, you're screwed. And obviously he used bigger profanity than that. Right. But if you did create culture and connection within your community, it's only gotten stronger during the pandemic. And so I just kind of wanted that popped up into my mind. Do you resonate with that? Do you think differently with that? As you were saying, maybe people took for granted kind of some of that connection and culture before, and maybe got hit in the face of trying to create it during the pandemic. But what do you think about that comment? If you had culture before, then it was even stronger during the pandemic. If you didn't, you were kind of, you had to try to figure things out pretty quickly.
Yeah, I think I agree more with the latter piece there than the former. So if you didn't have it, to start from ground zero during something like this is unique and challenging, to say the least. And just because you had it doesn't mean it got stronger. It definitely helped. And without intentional effort, again, it wouldn't have just grown. It would have stabilized. It would have stitched the pieces together slightly. At the end of the day, there are new ways of working. The future of work is incredibly different. And culture has been decimated by the pandemic in many ways. So again, there's a lot of risk as owners of businesses and leaders of great teams if we just look to the past and hope that that'll get us through for the future. It's incredibly different now. So I would actually say that that's a risk, is looking at the fact that I had culture and it's through the pandemic, it made us stronger. I would propose that this presents a wonderful opportunity to reevaluate and redefine what your culture ambition is for your company.
Yeah, I love that. And then kind of speaking specifically to the leaders, some leaders have business partners, some leaders are solo entrepreneurs. We'll get into next of like the value of being a part of EO and your journey through EO as well.
Yeah.
But it's a lonely place at the top as a leader sometimes, especially those that have big teams, let alone small teams, of feeling that responsibility. Maybe, what have you seen as being some tangible techniques or tools that your leaders have found to be, really helpful for not only their mental health getting through this as leaders, but also maybe their strategic leadership abilities? Like, what have you seen being some really tangible things that people can take away from listening to this today?
Well, short of saying hire a professional coach to help you navigate all that, that is what we do right on our coaching side of our business. But a different way to say that is just, seek peer support, seek professional support around you. And that could be, many different things, from a wellness perspective, a physical fitness perspective, a business, strategy, thought partner perspective. It is incredibly important to realize and be okay with not having to have all the answers. And I think that's a mindset that I would encourage those in that position to adopt as quickly as they can. And the moment you give yourself permission to be a beginner, and actually I'll say that again, like giving yourself permission to be a beginner is also essential at that level, because if you are on your own, if you've never done this before, that's okay. And embedded in that is just a whole bunch of learning if you're okay with the vulnerability that's required to learn. And, I always say, if you're not being disruptive and it's not uncomfortable, you're not actually growing. So as soon as you can have that mindset around these difficult times, you're able to be like, oh, this is super difficult and kind of interesting. Like, look at all the opportunity here. So again, I'd say play with your perspective. And that's where professional coaching can help someone be really neutral, right? You might say, oh, this is going on and it's like unbelievable in this world. And we might say, okay, so Andrew, that's one possibility that exists. What's another way to look at how you're experiencing the world today? And even just through thought partnership, you're able to navigate different opportunities to look at things. And organically, the actions you take change as a result of your perspective shift. And then you get different results. So yeah, play with perspectives. Don't try to have all the answers. Give yourself permission to be a beginner and just seek that support around you so that you can, co-create. That's probably a really nice bridge to the value of EO, actually.
Love that. And why don't we jump into that kind of as we get to the tail end of our connecting today?
Yeah.
Tell me about your experience with EO. How long have you been in EO? What does EO mean to you? If you were talking to someone else that wanted to be involved in an organization like this, what would you say? Just tell me a little bit about your experience.
Yeah, I've been really pleased with my experience with EO so far, Andrew. And I think I've heard others say, it was off to a little bit of a slow start. For me, what resonates the most is this is a gym, not a spa. And, I'm a person who likes both. I like the gym and the spa. So I can differentiate between the two. And I'm all about putting the time and energy into something in order to get the greatest experience. So that's what I've been focused on. It's been, absolutely wonderful. I've met some just tremendous people in terms of growing a network already. I've landed in just an outstanding forum, a wonderful group of, just great entrepreneurs and great people, and already learning so much along the way. And I would say that the investment in EO for me, and I've only been in EO for a very short period of time, I think 5-6 months, has already returned itself in spades. So that's wonderful when you think about the relationships and the impact, and the shared learning experiences are really high value as well.
That's awesome. And just kind of, leaving to the end or the last couple moments of us connecting today, if you were to give your younger self, let's say, whatever younger that is to you, if you were going to give your younger self some advice, what would you give yourself? What advice would you give yourself?
Yeah, I love this question. Thank you for that. In my profession, we butt up against a lot of like, I'll call it old school ways of thinking, really traditional, approaches, like, never brag about yourself, put your head down, get your work done, you'll get recognized when your time comes. And
Mhm.
a lot of those ways that many of us were brought up are no longer the way of the world today. And I find myself telling a lot of younger folks coming up in leadership, go out there and ask for what you want and be exceptionally bold and, and do it in a not abrasive way, but in an assertive way, like own your future. And
Mhm.
the reality is nobody will be as good as advocating for you other than you. And so the way I'll summarize it, if I were to look back and tell my younger version something, I would say, be your own number one fan and make sure people know what you're up to and how amazing you are and the great things you're doing. Because if you're not telling them, who is? And in the social media world, we always think, oh, people are following us. They know what we're doing because they look at our Instagram, or they definitely know what I'm my new job because I'm on LinkedIn. And that is so far from the truth. I've had coffee dates with many, people in my network over the years, and I'm like, oh yeah, so great team, we're growing. And they're like, oh, so you still have 3 people? And I'm like, no, we have 14. Right, because I haven't actually told you about all the amazing
Yeah,
things we're doing. So I would have just started doing that earlier in my career to probably accelerate a bit of the development that I had. So yeah, I'll leave that there.
that's awesome. Love
Yeah.
that. Well,
Yeah.
again,
Yes.
Christine,
Thank
I'm
you.
I'm so happy that we could connect today. So, Christine from Brightwire, if people want to reach out or find more about you, how can they do that?
Yeah, I think if there's any sort of inquiries, feel free to reach out to me directly on LinkedIn. hello@brightwireleadership.com is a great email. We're super responsive there. And we share a lot of thought leadership on our LinkedIn page. We're not active on Instagram, but we do a lot of thought leadership on LinkedIn. So if you just search Brightwire Leadership, we're there and we're active. So look forward to following along. And yeah, thanks again for having me today, Andrew, for the conversation.
Absolutely. And again, thank you to Fully Managed, one of our amazing sponsors of EO Calgary. And yeah, Christine, what a pleasure. We could have talked on for another hour, but we'll leave it there, and looking forward to connecting again soon.
Yeah, me too. Great. Thank you so much.
Okay, thanks.